"It's poison!" the little beggar girl cried out to the millionaire as he was about to take a sip of soup. Then she drinks it instead, and seconds later, something shocking happens. Comment and rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The desperate cry echoed through the bustling streets of the great metropolis like a lightning bolt cutting through the grey winter sky. "It's poison!" A small child's shrill voice pierced the morning hum, causing dozens of passers-by to stop and look around, confused. The little girl, only about 4 years old, looking more like a frail 2-year-old due to the severe malnourishment etched on her thin face, stood beside a bench in Central Park. Her large, frightened eyes were fixed on the elegant man holding a steaming cup in his hands, about to bring the liquid to his lips. The widowed millionaire paused, startled. At 30, he had the look of a movie star and had amassed a considerable fortune through savvy investments in Wall Street stocks. That morning, an unknown woman had approached him, offering a hot soup, claiming it was part of a charitable campaign for stressed executives. Without a second thought, the little beggar girl ran to him, and before any adult could react, snatched the cup from his hands and drank the entire contents in one gulp. The liquid dribbled down her chin as she stared at him with determination, as if she knew exactly what she was doing. "No!" the businessman shouted, trying to grab the child, but it was too late. Within seconds, the girl began to shake violently. Her little legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the cold sidewalk, her frail body racked by frightening convulsions. The crowd that had gathered around began to scream. Some people pulled out cell phones to call 911. Others simply watched in shock. The millionaire knelt beside the child, carefully scooping her into his arms. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're going to be all right," he murmured, though his own voice trembled with despair. When he looked up, searching for the woman who had offered the drink, she had vanished completely, as if she had never existed. "Someone call an ambulance," he yelled, but his wealth wouldn't allow him to wait. He carried the girl to his luxury car parked nearby and sped off towards the most expensive hospital in the city, where he had contacts that would guarantee the best possible care. During the frantic drive through heavy traffic, he watched in the rearview mirror the pale face of the unconscious child in the back seat. There was something in those delicate features that awakened in him a strange feeling, a paternal instinct he had never experienced, not even during his marriage, which had ended tragically 2 years earlier. At the hospital, doctors rushed the little patient to the emergency room while the businessman paced nervously through the clinic's lavish hallways. His hands, accustomed to closing multi-million-dollar deals, trembled as he tried to process what had just happened. "Sir, I need some information about the child," said a nurse, approaching with a clipboard. "Name, age, legal guardian." He looked at her, not knowing what to say. He didn't even know the name of the girl who had saved his life. All he knew was that she lived on the streets, probably abandoned, surviving on the occasional kindness of strangers like so many other children in the chaotic metropolis. I don't know," he admitted, running his hands through his hair. "She just appeared and—" His voice faltered as he remembered the scene. The next few hours passed like an eternity. The millionaire remained at the hospital, refusing to leave, even when his assistants called saying important meetings were being cancelled. His net worth in dollars, his investments, his businesses, none of it seemed to matter at that moment. When the doctor finally emerged from the operating room, his expression was grave. The child ingested a substance with very strong sedative properties. For an adult, it would only cause drowsiness, but for a body so fragile and malnourished, it was almost fatal. The businessman felt like he had been punched in the gut. The girl had risked her own life to save him from something that at most would have put him to sleep for a few hours. The magnitude of her sacrifice left him completely shaken. "Is she going to survive?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It's still too early to say. The next 48 hours will be critical. Her body is fighting against the effects of the substance, but she is stronger than she looks." The doctor paused, studying the man's expression. "May I ask what your relationship is to the child?" Again, he didn't know how to answer. How could he explain that a complete stranger had become, in a matter of minutes, the most important person in his life? How could he say that? For the first time since the loss of his wife, he felt he had a real purpose. "She saved me," he said simply, "and now I'm going to save her." That night, while the girl remained in the intensive care unit, connected to machines that monitored every beat of her tiny heart, the millionaire made a decision that would change both their lives forever. No matter what it cost, no matter what obstacles he faced, he would find out who had tried to poison him, and more importantly, ensure that this brave child never went hungry or cold on the streets again. 3 days had passed since the little one had been admitted, and the millionaire hadn't left the hospital for a moment. He slept in the armchair next to the bed, refused the meals his employees brought, and cancelled all the important appointments on his schedule. His company, which moved millions in deals daily, functioned practically without him, while all his attention was focused on the monitors that showed the child's vital signs. On the third morning, she finally opened her eyes. Small, frightened, but alive. The businessman jumped out of the chair when he noticed the movement, approaching slowly so as not to scare the girl. "Hi, sweetheart," he said softly. "How are you feeling?" She watched him for a long moment, her big eyes studying every detail of his face. Then, in a weak but clear voice, she asked, "Are you okay? The poison didn't hurt you?" The question hit the millionaire like a bolt of lightning. Even after spending 3 days between life and deterioration, her first concern was for his well-being. He felt his eyes well up and had to swallow the lump in his throat before answering. "I'm fine, thanks to you. You saved me." He sat on the edge of the bed carefully. "What's your name, honey?" "I don't have a real name," she replied, looking away. "On the street, they just call me Little One or Girl. No one ever asked my real name." The businessman's heart broke hearing those words. A 4-year-old who had never been important enough to have a name of her own. "Well, now you have someone asking. Everyone deserves a beautiful name." She thought for a moment, then whispered, "My mom, before she left, called me Angel, but that was a long time ago." "Angel," he repeated, smiling for the first time in days. "That's a perfect name for someone who saves lives." In the following days, while the little one physically recovered, the millionaire began his private investigation into who had tried to poison him. He hired private investigators, reviewed security cameras in the area, and offered a substantial reward for information about the mysterious woman. Every lead he found led him to dead ends, as if the person had simply evaporated. During this period, he discovered devastating details about the girl's life. She had been abandoned as a baby in an orphanage on the outskirts of the city, where she remained until she was 3 years old. The records showed that she fled the institution after documented episodes of abuse that made the businessman feel a rage he didn't know he possessed. "How does a 3-year-old survive an entire year on the streets?" he asked the investigator he had hired. "From what we've discovered, she joined a group of other abandoned children. They protect each other, share food, sleep in safe places they know well. It's a sad reality, but these children develop extraordinary survival instincts." It was then that the millionaire understood how the girl had managed to identify the danger in the drink. Months on the streets had taught her to detect threats that privileged adults like him would never perceive. It was a 6th sense developed by the need to survive in a hostile world. When she was finally discharged from the hospital, the little one flatly refused to go to the luxurious mansion he had prepared for her. "I need to go back to the streets," she said, with surprising determination for someone so young. "My friend is there. He's sick and he needs me." "What friend?" asked the businessman, worried. "He's a boy my age. We take care of each other. He can't be alone. He'll die without me." The millionaire's heart clenched again. The loyalty of this child, even after everything she had been through, was something he had rarely seen among adults in his social circles. "Then let's go get him. If he's important to you, he's important to me too." They found the boy under an overpass in the downtown area, shivering with fever and clearly malnourished. He was even more fragile than the little one had been. His lips were purple, and he could barely keep his eyes open. Without hesitation, the businessman carried him to the car and headed back to the hospital. "Severe pneumonia," diagnosed the doctor after the initial tests. A few more days without treatment, and it would be irreversible. While the boy received intensive medical care, the little one refused to leave the room. She slept on the floor next to his bed, held his hand during moments of feverish delirium, and sang softly songs she had learned on the streets to calm him. The millionaire watched this demonstration of pure love and realized that he was witnessing something rare: two children who had found family in each other amidst total abandonment. His decision was made. He would not separate those two. If the little one needed her friend to be happy, then both would have a home. It was during the boy's second week of hospitalization that the first real turning point occurred. The businessman was in his office trying to catch up on business when he received a call that would change everything. "Sir, we found something," said the private investigator. "The woman who offered the drink. She's been seen again, and there's something you need to know urgently." "What is it?" he asked, interrupting the meeting that was taking place in his office. "She was watching your house for 3 consecutive days, always at the same time. And we discovered one more thing. She didn't act alone. Someone hired her." The millionaire's world rocked. It hadn't been an isolated act of an unbalanced person. Someone had deliberately planned his elimination, using a desperate woman as a tool. But who would have a reason to want to see him out of the way? "There's more," continued the investigator. "We got a picture of her. I'll send it now." When the image arrived on his cell phone, the businessman felt like he had been punched in the gut. The face in the photograph was familiar, very familiar. Not the woman who had offered the drink, but there was something in those features that bothered him deeply. A resemblance that he couldn't identify, but that made his heart race. "I need to go to the hospital now," he said, abruptly interrupting the meeting and leaving the room without explanation. During the journey, a terrible suspicion began to form in his mind. The way the little one had reacted when she saw him that first day, the determination with which she had drunk the poison, as if she knew exactly what she was doing. And now that face in the photograph, which carried an inexplicable resemblance to... Arriving at the hospital, he found the girl sitting next to the boy's bed, who was already showing signs of improvement. She smiled when she saw him, a genuine smile that lit up her still pale face. "How is our boy doing today?" he asked, trying to keep his voice normal despite the storm of thoughts in his head. "Better. He can talk properly now," she replied, stroking the boy's hand. "He told me that he knows you from somewhere, but he doesn't remember exactly because of the fever." The businessman turned to the boy, who was watching him with big, curious eyes. "You know me?" "I think so," said the boy in a weak voice. "My mom worked for a rich man who looked like you. She always said he was nice, but that he never really saw her." A new piece of the puzzle fell into place in the millionaire's mind, bringing with it an avalanche of guilt and understanding that threatened to destroy everything he thought he knew about himself. The boy's words echoed in the millionaire's mind like a painful echo of the past. He sat heavily in the chair next to the bed, trying to process the information he had just received. His company had employed hundreds of people over the years, but there was something in the boy's description that awakened fragmented memories. "What was your mother's name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Her name was Rosa," replied the boy, his eyes filling with tears. "She was a night cleaner. She always came home very late and left early in the morning. She said she worked so she could buy me medicine." The businessman felt as if the world had stopped. Rosa. He vaguely remembered a woman by that name who worked on the night cleaning shift years ago, a dedicated employee whom he had only seen a few times during his late nights at work, always greeting him politely before starting to clean the offices. "What kind of medicine?" he asked, although he already feared the answer. "For my chest. I was always sick. I couldn't breathe properly. She said that one day she would get money to take me to a real doctor, not just the clinic." The boy coughed weakly, and the little one immediately leaned over to help him drink water. Guilt washed over the millionaire like an avalanche. While he had been amassing his fortune through investments in stocks and various ventures, one of his employees had been fighting alone to save her own son's life. And the worst part, he hadn't even known that this struggle was happening right under his nose. "What happened to her?" he asked, already dreading the answer. "She got very sick too. She worked too hard, didn't sleep enough. One day she just couldn't get out of bed anymore." The boy paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "After that, I went to a place with other kids, but it was very bad. That's where I met Angel." The businessman looked at the girl, who listened to the story in silence, holding her friend's hand. "And you? How did you get to that place?" "I've always been in places like that," she replied with devastating naturalness. "First in one, then in another. The grown-ups were always fighting, always yelling. When I met him, we decided it was better to just be the two of us." The magnitude of the system's failure around those children was overwhelming. Two little lives who had found in each other the family that the world had denied, surviving through pure determination and mutual loyalty. That night, the millionaire returned to his empty mansion, but couldn't sleep. He spent hours in the office, reviewing old employee records, searching for any mention of Rosa or requests for help that might have reached him. What he found was even worse than he imagined. In a forgotten folder at the bottom of a file, he discovered several handwritten letters. They were formal requests from employees requesting financial assistance for medical emergencies, serious family problems, desperate situations, all stamped with "denied" or "referred for review" with no return date. Among them, he found 3 letters signed by Rosa. In the first, she requested a loan to cover medical tests for her son. In the second, she pleaded for emergency aid for medication. In the third, more desperately, she offered to work extra shifts without additional pay in exchange for help with hospital expenses. None of the letters had reached him. All had been intercepted and filed by human resources managers, who apparently considered these requests irrelevant to company productivity. The discovery made him physically ill. While he was approving million-dollar bonuses for executives and expanding his investments in bitcoins and other assets, a desperate mother was begging for help to save her son's life. And that help was being systematically denied by employees acting on his behalf. The next morning he arrived at the hospital determined to do the right thing, but found a scene that alarmed him. Angel was agitated, pacing back and forth in the room, clearly disturbed. "What happened?" he asked, approaching her. "Someone came here during the night," she said, her voice trembling. "A woman. She was looking through the window, but when she saw me awake, she ran away." The businessman's heart raced. What did this woman look like? "She seemed sad, and she had eyes like mine," replied the girl, touching her own face unconsciously. The revelation hit him like a lightning bolt. The woman in the photograph that the investigator had sent, the resemblance that bothered him, the way the little one had reacted on that first day. The pieces fit together in a way that he didn't want to accept. He took out his cell phone and showed the photo to the girl. "Was it her?" The child's eyes widened and she began to tremble. It's her, but it can't be. She left a long time ago." "Who left, sweetheart?" "The woman who made me. She left me at the place for kids when I was a baby. I don't remember her well, but sometimes I dream about her singing." The girl's voice broke. "Why is she here?" "She doesn't like me." The millionaire's world completely collapsed. The woman who had tried to poison him was the biological mother of the child who had saved his life, the same child who was now trembling with fear at recognizing the face of the one who had abandoned her. Before he could fully process this revelation, his cell phone rang. It was the investigator. "Sir, we have a situation. The woman has been located, but there's something you need to know urgently. She's being blackmailed. Someone forced her to do that, threatening to hurt her daughter if she didn't obey. Her daughter is here with me," said the businessman, looking at the little one who was now clinging to the boy's arm for comfort. "That explains a lot. She probably recognized the child at the last moment, and that's why she hesitated. But there's more. We've discovered who's behind it all." "Who?" "Someone very close to you. Someone who has access to your routine, who knows your habits, who knew exactly where to find you that morning." The businessman felt like the ground was opening beneath his feet. The betrayal came from within his own circle, from someone he trusted, but who would have a reason to want to see him eliminated. "I need you to come to the office now," continued the investigator. "We have evidence that will shock you, and you need to decide how you're going to deal with this person before they try something worse." As he hung up the phone, the millionaire looked at the two children who had become the center of his life. Angel continued to tremble, clearly traumatized by seeing the mother who had abandoned her. The boy, even debilitated, tried to comfort her with gentle words. "You're going to be okay," he said, kneeling next to the bed. "I won't let anyone hurt you, I promise." But even as he made this promise, part of him wondered if he would be able to keep it. The revelations of the last few days had shown that he lived in a world of illusions, surrounded by people he thought he knew, but who hid devastating secrets. Angel looked up at him, still frightened, but with a glimmer of trust that made his heart clench. "You won't abandon us like she did?" "Never," he replied, holding her little hands between his own. "You are my family now, and family doesn't abandon family." But as he left the hospital to confront whoever was responsible for the betrayal, he carried with him the terrible certainty that the dangers around them were just beginning, and that the person who had tried to destroy him was still out there, planning the next move. The investigator's office was shrouded in gloom when the millionaire arrived, still reeling from the revelations at the hospital. Documents scattered on the table, photographs pinned to a board, and wires connecting different pieces of evidence created a scene that looked like it came out of a crime drama. "Sit down," said the investigator, his expression more grave than ever. "What I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about your life." He placed an audio recording on the table. "We got this through a contact. It's a phone conversation from 3 weeks ago." The sound that came from the device made the businessman's blood run cold. It was a female voice that he knew very well, a voice that he had heard for years at family dinners, celebrations, moments that he thought were happy. "Are you sure this is going to work?" said the voice on the recording. "If she does exactly as we planned, yes," replied an unknown male voice. "The sedative will leave him unconscious for hours, enough time for the accident to look natural." "And the woman? Will she keep her mouth shut? She has no choice if she doesn't do what we say. Her daughter will disappear forever. It's a perfect situation." The millionaire felt like he had been punched in the gut. The female voice belonged to his stepmother, the woman who had cared for him after the death of his parents, whom he considered family, who had total access to his house and knew every detail of his routine. "How did you find out?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "She made a mistake. She used the corporate credit card that you had given her to hire the man who blackmailed the girl's mother. We were able to trace the entire operation from there." The investigator continued to reveal details that painted a devastating picture. The stepmother had found out about a will that left a large part of the fortune to social institutions if he died without children. She believed that, as the only living relative, she would inherit everything if he was eliminated before starting a family. She planned everything down to the smallest detail, explained the investigator. She knew you passed through that park every morning. She knew your habits. She chose a desperate woman to be the instrument, someone who wouldn't be traced back to her. But why the girl's mother? Because that woman had approached you several times. She was desperate to get back the daughter she had been forced to abandon due to drug addiction. The stepmother found out about this and used her, promising to help her find her child in exchange for the favor. The puzzle finally came together in the millionaire's mind. The biological mother of the little one had tried to poison him not out of malice, but out of maternal despair. At the last moment, when she saw her own daughter about to drink the liquid in his place, her maternal instinct spoke louder than fear. "Where is my stepmother now?" "At home." "She doesn't know we've found out. She's waiting for news about the success of the operation." The millionaire stood up, a cold fury taking over his chest. 2 innocent children had almost lost their lives because of the greed of someone he loved like a mother. But when he arrived at the family mansion, where he had spent part of his childhood, he found a scene he didn't expect. The 55-year-old woman was sitting in the living room, crying compulsively. In her hands, she held an old photo, himself, still a teenager, next to a blonde girl of approximately the same age. "You found out, didn't you?" she said, without looking up when she heard him enter. "Why?" was all he could ask. "Because of her," replied the stepmother, pointing to the photo. "My daughter, my only daughter." The businessman approached, confused. He didn't remember an adopted sister. "You don't remember, do you? You were so focused on your own problems at the time." She laughed bitterly. "She died in a car accident 5 years ago, on the same day as your wife." The revelation hit him like a lightning bolt. The accident that had taken his wife's life had also claimed the life of his stepmother's daughter, a fact that had been omitted from him during his bereavement. "They were together in the car," she continued, her voice broken by pain. "My daughter was driving. She lost control on a wet curve. 2 lives lost because of a few seconds of inattention." "I didn't know," he murmured, sitting down heavily. "Of course you didn't know. You were so immersed in your own grief that you didn't even realize that I was also suffering. For all these years I thought you didn't care about her death, that only your wife mattered." Her tears intensified. "I started to hate you, to blame you for having everything. Money, success, a whole life ahead of you, while my only reason for living had been buried along with your wife." The millionaire felt as if the world was collapsing around him. His stepmother had planned his elimination not only out of greed, but out of a pain that he didn't even know existed, a loss that they had suffered together, but processed in complete isolation. "But when I saw that child, when I learned that she was the daughter of the woman I had used," she paused, wiping her eyes, "I saw my own daughter in her. I saw the innocence that was taken from me. That's why you called off the plan. I didn't call it off in time. The woman had already offered the drink when I tried to contact her, when I saw the girl take the poison in your place." Her voice broke completely. It was like my daughter was dying again. They remained silent for long minutes, 2 people destroyed by loss, sharing a pain that they had never been able to express. The businessman understood that his stepmother was not a calculating villain, but a mother broken by loss, consumed by a sorrow that had fermented in solitude for years. "What are we going to do now?" she asked finally. "First, we're going to help the girl's mother recover. She was a victim as much as any of us," he said, surprising himself with his own capacity for forgiveness. "Then, we're going to fix the mess at the company. And you," he paused, looking at the woman who had raised him after the death of his parents. "You're going to help me raise these children. They need a family, and we need to learn to be a real family." In the months that followed, an extraordinary transformation took place. The biological mother of the little one, whose real name was Lucia, entered a rehabilitation program paid for by the businessman and slowly began to rebuild her life. At first, the girl rejected any approach. But with patience and therapy, mother and daughter began to build a new relationship based on the present instead of the abandonment of the past. The boy, who had chosen the name Miguel for himself, showed an impressive aptitude for numbers and organization. He began to help the millionaire with simple tasks at the company, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of business that impressed everyone around him. The little one, who decided to keep the name Angel, developed an extraordinary ability to identify lies and malicious intentions. Her experience on the streets had sharpened her instincts in a way that became valuable in protecting the family against future threats. The company underwent a complete restructuring. The millionaire implemented a system of direct communication with all employees, ensuring that requests for help reached him directly. Part of its profits was allocated to an emergency fund for workers' families, an initiative that transformed the corporate culture. His stepmother found purpose in caring for the children, rediscovering the joy of being important in someone's life. Through family therapy, she and the businessman finally processed the shared grief and learned to honor the memory of both his wife and her adopted daughter. At the end of a year, marked by painful revelations and gradual healing, the makeshift family gathered every night for dinner. Angel had grown, gained weight, and recovered the sparkle in her eyes. Miguel laughed easily and talked about plans for the future. Lucia visited regularly, building a healthy relationship with her daughter. And the stepmother had found peace through mutual forgiveness. One evening, as he watched the children playing in the mansion's garden, the millionaire reflected on how an attempt at destruction had turned into the greatest blessing of his life. He had discovered that true wealth was not in his investments or net worth in dollars, but in the family he had built through love, forgiveness, and the second chance that everyone deserves. Angel approached him, took his hand and smiled, the same courageous smile that had saved his life on that cold winter day. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what, sweetheart?" "For teaching me that family isn't who you're born with, but who chooses to stay with you." And at that moment, the businessman knew that he had found the only fortune that really mattered. A home where 4 wounded souls could finally find the cure for their deepest pains and the hope of a future built on solid foundations of trust, forgiveness, and unconditional love.